Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark Wells from the Small Business Development Center. I'm a counselor for Bowie in Prince George's County, Maryland University, and Bowie State. Joining me is the other counselor, that's Deidre Lee. And Deidre is also the counselor for the same areas except for Bowie State. So without further ado, I'm going to talk about PPP first, because that seems to be what's on everybody's mind. The second resilient funding came out on January 15th, but it was only turned over to the smaller institutions. If you have a smaller bank that you were dealing with before, I do recommend that you go back to them. But the banks that come off the top of my head is Industrial Bank, Harbor Bank, LEDC, Freedom Bank, and most of the smaller banks that we're dealing with PPP is what I recommend that you go back to. But today, the larger banks pick up. Now, we don't have a list of any of the larger banks that are picking up at this current moment, but if you check on our website, I'm sure that we'll have a listing there. And if you're not familiar with our website, it's www.marylandsbdc.org. Okay, the second go round with PPP is the most important thing is having your business package together, because a lot of times, this money runs out very quickly. So if you don't have your business package together and you drag your feet kind of getting there, it really kind of does you in, because either you're going to be waiting a long time because there's a lot of people in front of you, or you might not get it at all. So it's important to have your 2019 taxes done. It's important to make sure you're in line with in good standing, because if you're not in good standing, you're not going to get it. If you have any tax liens or anything like that out there, it's going to hurt you. So the other big thing, this is a big thing, you want to show that you've been hurt by this COVID. So you have your profit and loss statement for the last 2 years, and that's where a lot of people kind of get into trouble, because it needs to show that in 2019, and I'm going to use an example. I'd like to tell stories, so I'm going to use an example of you. Let's say you made $240,000 in 2019. Well, you want to show that in your tax return, but you also want to show it on your profit and loss statement. And that profit and loss statement, I recommend that you do it month to month, not a quarterly one and not an annual one, because neither one. Quarterly one might fly, but an annual one will do better. But it's important because in 2020, when COVID hit, if you had it on a chart, your chart would say, oh, I'm going along the same as I did in 2019, then drop. You drop 25, 30, 40%, and you want to be able to demonstrate that you drop the entire rest of this year, or however many months it took you to kind of come back or make an adjustment that brought your income back up. Because if you can't show that, that usually throws up kind of a red flag, and then it comes back, questions and delays what's going on. Now, you can't apply for the second tranche unless you have a 25% reduction in your income. That's back to the P&L statement that shows that you had a 25% reduction in income. So I would recommend that you do it as soon as possible. If you don't know how to do it, you need to contact Deidre or myself. All you have to do is go to our website and register if you're not already registered. If you're already registered, you should have our email address, and we'll be happy to assist you to get these things done. Deidre, did you want to add anything to that before I move on to EIDL?
Yeah, so with the PPP, especially the second round, and I believe it's going to be the first round, you have to show a loss as well, where you didn't have to show so much before. But the important thing is that the loss is kind of, you have to show it in at least one quarter of 2020 over what you made in 2019. And so for some folks that were able to rebound or got the first PPP money and it kind of smoothed out their road, a lot of people took a big hit in quarter 2 of 2020. And so the 25% number, if you look year over year, you may have rebounded in quarter 3 or quarter 4. That doesn't put your case off the table. I think the standard and what the application is showing is that you just have to have at least a 25% loss in one quarter. So if you're one of those businesses that had to shut down in March or April, or had a lot of loss of contracts, a lot of business, then if you can pull your quarterly statements from 2019 as compared to your quarterly statement from 2020, I would see, at least what I'm seeing so far, is most businesses are meeting that criteria. So it's great to have rebounded, and some people have even almost evened out, but you're really going to be able to show the loss quarter over quarter, year over year. And so that's important. The whole thing doesn't write you off the table.
Well, and we recommend that you do QuickBooks, because that seems to be the most generic way that we've been able, that SBA is able to make an analysis of what kind of funding that you had or how much you had a decrease in your funding. Well, I'm going to move on to EIDL. Now, if you got an EIDL loan the first time around, you cannot go back and get another loan, but you can get an increase. But the increase will be only up to $150,000. And you need to still do the same thing that you're doing with PPP. As Deidre and I said in our previous conversation, that if you don't have the proof that you're showing a reduction, and I believe on the EIDL, is it 30%, Deidre?
Yes, 30%.
30% reduction on EIDL. And so, but you can apply for the increase. So all of those same things apply. And all of those same things that you would do in any loan package apply here. But what I really want to stress is that you got to make sure that you're keeping your tax returns and those things up to date. Because if you let that slip, a lot of people let the registering for good standing because it costs $300 or whatever it costs. You need to pay that so that you're in good standing and that they can identify those things and it doesn't hold them up from getting the money back. I think that this time, because they were new at it the first time, that your refund should be faster and kind of know what to expect. Now, kind of jumping back to PPP, if this is your first time doing it, all of these same things apply except the reduction. You need to just state it as it is. Anything you want to add to EIDL?
Yeah, I think the other thing, and the SBA hasn't been very clear, because part of the legislation says that the EIDL grant is going to become available again. And so I feel like the EIDL grant may have closed in August, even though the loan program was still open. So for certain jurisdictions, certain zip codes, certain areas of the country that are deemed like low income developing, then they will be eligible for the grant. Now, they haven't made it clear if you can go back for a second grant, but that grant up to $10,000 is going to be open again. I'm not sure if it will be the same application or a different application, but that too is on the way. So if you receive the loan the first time and are not necessarily looking to take on more debt, there may be an opportunity to get additional grant funds through the same program.
Now, Deidre, I think we should elaborate on that grant portion, because I know I was confused when I first got it, and I've been around banking a long time, that when you apply for the loan and the grant is a part of that application, or is it separate this time going around?
We don't know. You
don't know. Okay, because I know it was combined the first time around. So if you apply for the loan, you automatically were considered for the grant. Okay. So we're going to move on to new stuff, which is grant funding, which everybody should love, from BGE, because we don't have to pay that back. So that starts today, and it starts off, it's $20,000 is the amount of the grant, and the same kind of things apply. If you put your loan package together, you should be able to step forward on any of these grants or any of these loans and put the same package out there. Almost the same things are required. Now, in this BGE grant, this is new. It started today and it ends on March 3rd. That shows you how fast this money is going to go away. And so it's supposed to reopen on May 5th and go to June 16th. But if you want to take advantage of it the first time around, you want to be able to get it out today. Now, I was under the impression that you could go to BGE's website and go ahead and apply. But I got some other information from a client today that you have to go to this website called Hello Alice. That's the first I've ever heard of that. You anything different, Deidre?
I'm looking up to see if I can find the link and put it in the chat now.
Okay.
And then that way you'll have direct access to it.
Okay. But I think that especially if this is something that will sustain you and you don't have to pay it back, and all you have to do is make sure, and this goes for PPP, this goes for EIDL, it goes for the grant. There may come a time when they come back to you and ask you to prove how you spent the money. And I was looking at a QuickBooks that I saw the other day, where each month they laid out the amount of money, the expense and all that thing, but they laid out how much of the grant or how much of the loan went back into that month to make them whole. So that makes it very easy for somebody that's looking at your paperwork to understand that where the disadvantage is and how much you spent, and how much you contributed. Because a lot of times when they come back and you can't respond to that, then it kind of puts you in a hairy situation where they might come back to you and say, well, you need to refund this because you went out and bought a mansion or something ridiculous. So just make sure that you document everything that you do. Okay, now there are other things that are out there. The Restaurant Resilient Fund. Now I know that it is expiring, I believe, January 22nd, and I believe the funds are already exhausted. Is that correct?
As far as I know, they are accepting applications through the 22nd. This is the second round of funding. And so I think part of maybe the funding issues is that they did have some issues with businesses that were awarded on the first round, also applied for the second round, just because of the delay in receiving the funds or the delay in being informed that the grants have been awarded. And so they are keeping the application open through the 22nd. As far as the funds being committed, they may be committed tentatively because there are folks with the issues of being in good standing and making sure they're in a place where they actually can receive the funds. And so the application, as of this morning, the application portal is still open. So if you haven't applied, and we don't know because there's other funding that's coming out for restaurants, for events. We're not sure if they're going to open a third round of that funding. They haven't made that clear because this is the second round. And so in the event that happens, typically those applications that are in there are first in line for additional funding. Similar to the Maryland grant program, some of you may have been recently funded for that because when they added additional funds to that program, they ended up awarding the businesses that were eligible, but they had run out of money for. So there are folks now still receiving the Maryland grant funds.
And you took the words right out of my mouth, Deidre, because that's what I was going to say. Don't think because their funds are exhausted, they're not coming back with some more funds. I think that Angela Alsobrook is pursuing some funding right now. And because the new funding is coming out, they have to get a piece of that funding. So if you apply and you don't get it right away, I saw so many service industries that last year, and I talked to Deidre about this a lot of times, where they only got $10,000 in the grant. The next thing you know, a month later, they got another $10,000 because the funding came back around. So don't be discouraged by it being exhausted because I think it's coming back around. And I think that's also a commitment to from Joe Biden that he's going to bring more funding back probably in 90 days. So don't get discouraged by the fact that you didn't get it right away, because sometimes I've known people to get their funding in 10 days, and then I've known them to take 3 months. So just make sure that you can contact one of us, especially we try to stay on top of where the funding is and what cycle it is in. If you get rejected, I don't recommend that you go back and approach that by yourself, that you might give a consultant a call, because a lot of times we have some remedies for you that are much quicker than what you would be able to put together by yourself. Okay, so moving on to other entities that we have now, there's some new programs available, and a lot of them, because of buoy demographics, don't always apply. I think you mentioned the Maryland Small Business Emergency Relief Fund, and that was, I don't know if that's still available. Is that still available?
It has not technically reopened, but anyone who applied and were notified that there were no funds available, they are getting funded now. So I've had clients actually get funded within the last couple of weeks. And so they are going through, when they received the additional money, they never reopened the application. They just ended up funding folks that were already in the queue. I don't know. Governor Hogan is introducing, another $1 billion relief fund. And so I think they're negotiating that now. So there may be more funds in that specific program. It was rumored that the loans that came out through that program would be converted to grants under certain circumstances, but I haven't heard anything specific about that.
Now, the other program was the Maryland Small Business Emergency Relief Grant Fund. That was only $10,000. I don't know that I've had many that qualified for that, but I don't know that it's still available either.
It's available if you were in the queue. If you had already applied for it and were deemed eligible, they are still going through applications and still committing funding. But if you hadn't applied as of April, then the fund never reopened for new applications.
Now, for the clients that I have for the SBDC, the third one is the Emergency Relief Manufacturing Fund. I don't know if you do, Deidre, or that Carmen may, have very many manufacturings in our demographic. So it just hasn't been, I haven't had someone that's a manufacturer to come to me and say, I need some COVID assistance. But if you do, I would be glad to pursue that for you.
The funds on that one ran out pretty quickly, and I don't know if there are more, but what they took as manufacturing was pretty wide. So there was a mask maker who was, sewing masks at home, who was funded maybe $5,000 under that program to deliver to small businesses when the pandemic first broke out. So they're pretty broad in terms of their response. And so when and if that should reopen, then that may be viable. And the thinking is a little broader than, I guess, just pure play manufacturing.
I'm gonna backtrack a little bit and go back to BGE. And BGE would consider you have to have 2 to 25 employees. If you have above 25 employees, you're not going to get the grant. You have to make less than 7 million. And of course, you have to be in good standing. We talked about that before, but and you have to have they say a strong plan for moving forward. That means they might be asking for a business plan. So the only thing I have left is we just got introduced to a company called BetterFin. And I think that we have about 3 referrals there now. We're kind of see how that falls out. And I'm not that familiar with BetterFin, but if something has come back to you and that maybe it's an alternative lender that you've been turned down by some other institutions, I think BetterFin and LEDC may be an option. Are you more familiar with BetterFin? Have you done anything, Deidre?
I have not, outside of having some folks take the initial kind of survey. In my opinion, after going through what they do is very similar to like when you're looking for a mortgage and you go to, they're called Loan Care or Loan Quest, where you put in all your information and they basically match you with a lender that would suit, that is looking to fund like your business type, your needs. I haven't had anyone go beyond that initial survey, but it in this environment is most likely is an option because people are going to need to expand a little more, and a lot of people are going outside of their normal banking purview. I mean, I guess, Mark, you can speak to the larger banks that typically people would go to are not really, from my opinion and what I've heard over the last few months, are just not really doing small business loans at this time. So unless the goal is very specific. And so I think looking at something like BetterFin just widens the scope and gives a little more options, because here locally I haven't, heard too much action.
Well, see, I think you're absolutely right. And that's where a lot of folks get in the weeds. When you go to the larger banks, they're not really jumping up and down about PPP. So I recommend that the community banks and the smaller banks that's why they gave them the opportunity first. And if you're already working with a bank and you have a contact person there, it's great. If you don't, that's when you want to give Deidre or myself a call, because we usually, if you're looking for, now I'll give you an example. If you need equipment or something like that, there's a Largo, a federal credit union, is an equipment lender. So when you're for the city of Bowie, whatever your needs might be, the banks that are within the city limits, sometimes we if you need funding, we might go outside the city limits to get it. But between the two of us, I think it'd be kind of hard for us not to be able to find some place to place them. So anything else that you want to add into our overview?
One other thing, and I will put that link into the chat. There's a program through Comcast called Comcast Rise. You don't have to be a Comcast subscriber. You just have to be in their service area, which is pretty wide, and I'm sure Bowie and the surrounding areas are in their service area. Personally, I had 3 clients who received kind of support from Comcast, either technology equipment, marketing support, and other services, free internet and cable for a year in their business location, which is helpful. And basically, a consultant that will work with them to build their online presence, their social media presence, and really help with the transition from in-person to online. I'm going to put that information in the chat. It's a simple program, a simple application process. And so the first round of the support is basically technical support and equipment. The second round of the program is a $10,000 grant. So some of the awardees from the first round will be granted based on, the needs will be granted actually like cash infusion. And so I will add that. As far as I know, Comcast already has awarded that initial grant to 55 businesses in Prince George's County, ranging from like small home-based startups to larger enterprises. So it's worthwhile to do that. The application is very simple and could lead to something larger, especially for those folks looking out there for marketing support.
I'm going to talk a little bit about logistics before we turn it over to some questions. But from a PPP standpoint and an EIDL standpoint, we have our survival kit, and it's on our website. And if you go in and look at our survival kit, it gives you directions on how to apply for these things. And I hope we all know that PPP, you have to get the application. Our link is on our website. It's also on SBA's website. And complete that application. Then you turn it over to the bank of your choice that you're going to put the PPP in. EIDL, it's different. You have to apply for that online through SBA. Now, I recommend that if you're not familiar with it, that you contact one of us. And if you're not registered with us, that you go ahead and register with us, because that makes makes it a lot easier when we can put together the list for you, or go over the list that you give us. Because I've seen a lot of profit and loss statements that should be done in QuickBooks. And a lot of times you might want to contact your accountant to make sure that those requirements are met. Most of the time when I see someone that has gone through their accountant first, then it makes their job a lot easier. And actually makes my job a lot easier too. So I'm looking forward to being able to help everyone. I think that the SBA has a better handle on it than they originally, because it was all new to them. And I think we do too. So I'm going to, Deidre, if you don't have anything else, I'm going to open up the door for questions.
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead.
So anyone got any questions? there's no wrong question, there's no small question or anything, because you know how many people out here that are thinking the same thing that you're thinking. We'll be glad to, ask the questions, or you can call us up on the email and send it to us if you feel like you want to do it that way.
I guess that means you did a fantastic presentation, that there's no questions. So kudos to both of you.
Okay.
Okay, well, we do have something in the chat that Wanda Rogers to everyone. Says, yeah, thank you, great presentation. Oh, I think Bernice wanted to ask something, but then her pup piped in. So if we give her a second to come back, there she is.
Okay.
I have some, I'm on duty for parental care, but I wanted to let you know, my name is Bernice, Dr. Bernice Smith. I launched Green Vessels, a public health and community safety nonprofit in 2019. And I really kicked off my programs in 2020. In fact, I wanted to reach out to seniors through outdoor activities, but I was not able to launch that program because of COVID. I wanted to start that in 2020. So I focused on another program, which is awareness on how to use our electronic devices more safely. So I ended up only getting a grant for $5,000. I've been using my own personal funds to support some data gathering with youth. And I'm wondering, based on the different opportunities that you identified, I'm wondering if I would be deemed eligible for a grant.
Well, I'm not sure, because the time factor is a big deal. If you didn't start your business until after March, it's kind of hard for them to gauge where you went up and down or how you lost money. And see, now if you started, and I'm assuming by what you just told me, you were later, maybe May, April or sometime.
Right.
That's correct. So your business is only climbing up because it's never been, you didn't have any income from it previous to that. So it'd be kind of hard to show that you're at a deficit. So it might be difficult, but I'm not going to say don't do it, but it might be difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, so from the folks in your position, what I've seen is that they have been funded on the more local level. For example, the city of Hyattsville did a $5,000 grant for small businesses there, and they did 2 rounds of that to help people with rent, because those local funds are they're more interested in preserving their business communities and preserving their business districts. So they have a little more leeway in the way that they use the funding. When the funding is federal or even on the state level and it's CARES Act funding, I think those specific requirements are coming from a little bit of a higher level. So they are, like, for example, with Prince George's County and their programs, you have to provide like a 2019 tax return to show that you were in business for the major part of that year. So as you get more local, as you get smaller, then the opportunities are probably a little better to strengthen and support the local community. But on the higher level, you're going to be, like Mark said, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any more questions?
Just a little plug for SBDC before we close it out. Okay, we do assist, and this goes for the city of Bowie and then anyone else that is interested in looking for assistance. We do startup assistance, business plan development, networking opportunities, financial assistance, consulting, one-on-one, 8A certification, and MDOT certification. That's MBE and DBE. Restaurant, we have a specialized restaurant division. We have a federal and state contracting assistance, and also executive training, demographic and marketing assistance. And all of that comes not just from Deidre and I, but there's 50 other people that we tap on that on a regular basis in the state of Maryland that everybody has a certain level of expertise. Our finance team has over 10 people, with each one of them having more than 25 years experience in different locations all over the state. And I reach out to them on a daily basis. I don't think there's a question that can be asked that this team couldn't answer. So with that said, there's no more questions. Please don't hesitate to contact us. I think our email is out there, and I look forward to being able to assist anybody in the city of Bowie.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us today. Again, another fantastic webinar. Mark, Deidre, again, appreciate your time. And now more than ever, this proves that our businesses do need a plan. And if you could take a moment just to fill out our exit poll as you sign off, that would be fantastic. And again, thank you for joining us today. And this concludes our event.
All right. Okay, Pauline.